explained in the conference package, but we do have those teams there to help you. Speaking of the conference package, as a reminder, late resolutions are due at the latest noon today. So at noon, no new late resolutions will be accepted. And again, we have to get through all on-time resolutions before heading into the late resolutions. And that again is all described in the conference package. Just as a quick reminder, also on the process for voting, Adam will continue trying to go for consensus, and if we need to, we will go to a vote. For a resolution to be passed, it must have 60% in favor. So again, based on our quorum count, and then on the voting, 60% has to have voted for. For participants that are joining us on Zoom, welcome. And just as a reminder that you do need to change your name to include your title, your community, as well as your name. And we have AFN staff that should be there to assist you if ever you need it. You can use the chat function within your own group on Zoom, but we as chairs do not have access to it. So again, the only way that we can see you is if you use the raise hand function. We do have, again, the code of conduct, and I just want to say thank you. With our Prime Minister yesterday, I think it's always something that can be very high in emotion, and I just want to recognize the work that you guys did to make it a great space for that discussion. To go through the agenda for today. Again, the agenda that was voted on by the chiefs yesterday is the one that we are going through today. So we'll start the day with the resolutions, and Adam will be here to guide you through that process. There will be an honoring associated to one of these resolutions for Elijah Harper. We'll then, before going into lunch, have a plenary on S2, a decision and a bill that does affect many of our communities, so we'll have many speakers to come address it. And just as a heads up, this will not be a question-taking session, but we do have the minister with us tomorrow, so get your questions ready for then. After we come back from lunch, we'll have more resolutions, and again, we've been on a roll. We might break a record this year, after which we'll go into the ending of the afternoon with a plenary session on the National Long-Term Reform for Child and Family Services, as well as Jordan's Principle. And after that, from 4 to about 5, we'll have 3 different presentations on Major Projects Office, the First Nations Infrastructure Financing, as well as an announcement from the First Nations Bank of Canada. So that gives us a general view of what we will be doing today. You have access, again, to all your materials on the AFN website, events.afn.ca, if ever you need it. But we also do have our distribution team, which has been handing out resolutions. And if ever you do have questions, as a mover and seconder, we again have our resolutions committee, which we forced to stand yesterday. And thank you for your work, everyone. Before we get started with our day, I'd like to take the time to invite Vernon Jebb up, because today's the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a day that's observed annually on December 3rd, and the theme for this year is Fostering Disability, Inclusive Societies for Advancing Social Progress. To help commemorate this day, we invite Vernon Jebb again to help guide us in learning First Nations Sign Language. A few words that we had from yesterday, so again, hello, thank you, and remember to applaud is like this. And don't forget, as mentioned by Vernon yesterday, sign language is steeped in First Nations history, and it's part of the rich diversity that we find in our living languages. I would look towards Vernon and also recognize, as she is heading down, Debbie and our sign language interpreters that are here to help make this event accessible. And as a quick reminder, you do have the accessibility team who is just here to our right, your left, if ever you do have any specific needs. Right.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. As mentioned, today is a very special day, the United Nations International Day of People with Disabilities. Before I get started, I do want to recognize that the interpreter is just learning Cree, and so we'll be patient with her. I do want to share with you Mino Patasawan, which means good life, not living in perfection, but in balance, respect, connection, and together. When we invite people who have disabilities, we recognize their unique gifts and teachings. Every person who has a disability has a place in our circle. And when our voices are heard and welcome within that circle, it means that our communities grow stronger together. We move forward in a good way. I would like to share with you 5 new signs. You can either copy me or you can just sit back and enjoy. The first sign I'd like to share with you is balance. Balance. If you're out of balance, way out of balance, or in balance. Respect. Respect. Not hoping for something, but for being respectful. Connect. Connection. Connection. Inclusion. So we have one hand is the circle, and we're including people with disabilities into our circle, inclusion. And last but not least, wisdom. Wisdom. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day and work hard at moving those resolutions today.
Thank you, Vernon. And thank you again to all of our accessibility team making this available for all of our brothers, sisters, and cousins across Turtle Island. We'll be getting into resolutions in just a few moments. Again, giving time to those who are within the caucus rooms to please head towards the Assembly Hall. And for those of you who are within the Circle of Trade, spend your money, then please come here immediately. I would look towards my co-chair, Adam. Are we ready?
We're ready.
We're ready. Have a great day, everyone.
Miigwech Cedric, miigwa Jimna, wenogam gagjibayak, marjminstahimina doesn't gayaman. Sagan man goyakagia, nwishin nawa, we got the cook. Goyakagi, one wanshka nawa. Miigwa Jimna. So, welcome, good morning, everyone. We've got a lot of work to get into today. Many resolutions, of course, lots of good discussion and dialogue for today and tomorrow. So we'll get right into resolutions. Before I do that, I'd like to officially now call the meeting to order. And the time is 9:22. So we will now officially start our business. So yesterday, when we were dealing with resolutions, we left off with draft resolution number 6. So I'm going to get the team to put that up on the screen. That is up on the screen. A couple of things first, while we are getting into resolutions, I know Cedric mentioned this. The deadline for late resolutions is 12 o'clock today. So that is the deadline again for late resolutions. And under your rules of procedure, the priority are resolutions that did meet the original deadline. So any late resolutions that are submitted, there's no guarantee that we will get to it. But if there is time at the end of our resolution sessions, we will start looking at late resolutions that, of course, met the deadline for 12 o'clock today. I know, Chiefs, you've traveled a long ways from across the country. It's spent a lot of time, a lot of money to get here, and we do have a lot of business to get through. So we have scheduled all afternoon of day 3 tomorrow, right up until 4 o'clock to deal with resolutions. So I know that we'll be rolling up our sleeves and sitting in the room, participating, so that we can get through as many resolutions as we can. And that's the goal that we always look at, that we are looking to get through all of the on-time resolutions. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that. So again, we left off with draft resolution number 6. The mover is Chief Don Smoke. Can I confirm Chief Smoke is here? Thank you. Seconder, Proxy Tyrone McNeil, who is also here in the room. Just to help refresh everyone's memory, I did already read the resolution into the record, but I'm going to read the therefore be resolved again, just to bring us back to the resolution from yesterday. So there were some amendments made. Before I get into where we left off, I will read as it's currently presented. So it reads, therefore be resolved that the First Nations in Assembly, 1, reaffirm the jurisdiction over First Nations education remains with each First Nation. 2, call on the Government of Canada to A, support existing regional education models approaches, B, restore support for all regional education agreements, REA negotiation tables, C, provide the necessary funding to finalize and implement education agreements that reflect First Nations' unique circumstances, and D, ensure no further reductions are made to First Nations education funding in subsequent years. 3, call on the Government of Canada to maintain previous commitments for funding protection policies, including the 1.5% annual reduction. 4, call on the Government of Canada to reinstate the targeted student ancillary support for all students at the $500 in 2021 dollars per student funding level for the 2025-2026 school year to help students access essential materials. 5, call on the Government of Canada to continue working with regional technical tables to ensure the interim regional funding formulas are updated to capture the true costs of First Nation education. 6, call on the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada to meet with the Chiefs Committee on Education to discuss and co-develop decision-making protocols by August 2026, any changes to Indigenous Services Canada education program funding. 7, affirm that nothing in this resolution is meant or shall be interpreted to diminish, limit, impact, or supersede the ability of a First Nation or region to exercise their inherent jurisdictions, to exercise and fulfill their rights and authorities under treaties, or to engage in their unique relationship with Canada. So that is the resolution. Where we left off yesterday, there was a request for a friendly amendment. The mover and seconder have had a discussion with that requester, and the consensus with the group there is that they will leave that so that that amendment will not be coming forward, is my understanding. Okay, thank you. And we left off, I believe you were at the microphone, so we'll go to microphone number 2. Yeah.
Well, good morning. No agumagantig mo ganes ko meet na Delbert Wapas and Sigas and Kaptago Nago che Tanner Child. And ask ko mano tegas kita nga pe tutang nga pe sitos kat manum mamopon. Maganan tagap may temig no agumagan tigatyo mo magsnamagyon. Iwi mams kutaman. I want to say just quickly that it gets frustrating, you know, to see resolutions like this come forward. When in 2017 or 2016, the education envelope was opened back when Minister Philpott was here. We had the opportunity to negotiate and to get what we wanted in education. And we squandered that opportunity. There were three memos to cabinet that went forward. And when we asked which memo went forward, AFN could not tell us which memo went to Cabinet on our behalf and what the ask was. The push then was that we want comparable funding to what the province gets. There were a handful of us that said, no, we don't. The funding that we need is based on needs. What every community identifies what they need is what they should get. Why would we agree for comparable funding when even that comparable funding with the province is a lot less than what the French get? But yet, as treaty First Nations peoples, we are entitled to more. So why would we agree to comparable funding? Today, we don't even have enough money to top up our bus drivers. Now the communities are being forced to take over the buses from individuals that have driven their buses and owned them for a long time. So where's the seriousness about what we're doing? We can't be dictated by the politics of the day, by secret agendas. That's what affects us in our communities. Chiefs, understand that you do not want to agree to comparable funding, and that's what happened in 2017. The Chiefs Committee on Education unfortunately squandered our opportunity to make it as right as we could. In this resolution, under therefore be it resolved, there should be a D that supports needs and treaty-based models. There's nothing, no language like that in there. And that this shouldn't be handled by the Chiefs Committee on Education, that it should be handled by First Nations themselves. Those are my friendly amendments. And let's don't squander the opportunity, because we are struggling enough to try to provide a JC Penney quality of education at a Kmart price. Thank you.
If we can have you work with the resolutions team with your the text of your requested friendly amendment, and at which point we will read it into the record, and I will ask the mover and seconder if they concur with the proposed amendment. While we are doing that, I will look to the floor. I don't think you're just standing by to respond, or did you want? Okay, thank you, Miigwech. So we do have the mover and the seconder of the resolution standing by. I'm just going to check online as well. I do not see any hands raised online. So again, there is a proposed amendment, and we're just working with the resolutions team to have that, the actual text, and then I will read it and check with the mover and seconder. Microphone one.
Thank you, Chair. Tyrone McNeil, President of Tribal Chiefs, Dollar Tribal Council, proxy for Member Community Scowlett, seconding the resolution. Just for the Chiefs and Assembly's information, over the years we've had numbers of regions across the country stand up and demand comparable funding to public schools. That's been there for 20 years or more, Chair. I've been on the Chiefs Community Education for quite some time. Yet we built this entire model in 2017 for a regional approach. If you as a region want comparable funding to public education, fly at it, that's yours to determine. Regions such as British Columbia, we never demanded comparable funding. We want similar funding methodologies as public schools with specific adaptations. For example, a connectivity fund for a public school in British Columbia is about $12 per FTE. In our model, it's well over $1,000 per FTE, because that's more of a real cost for BC First Nations. So the whole intent of the policy framework put together in 2017 was to allow regions to work amongst each other as regions, so none of us are telling you what your funding methodology is. You determine that yourself. And if you determine that you want comparability, fine. None of us have a right to say, no, that's not enough. But if you want more, that's yours to determine, because the whole basis of that policy framework, Mr. Chair, was to allow for the real-world costs for educating our kids, regardless of where they are in town, in urban areas, in fly-in-only areas, boat-in-only areas. It's your lived reality, right? So you can't really harmonize anything nationally, and that's the second significant thing this policy framework did. It really impressed upon the federal government to work with us that are willing to work as regions, or say in BC, Mr. Chair, we have 204 First Nations working collaboratively on education. We've had that for decades. In other regions, if you want to bring 10, 15, or 20 communities together and call yourself a regional organization, there's room in there to do that. So there's lots of flexibility here. For those of you that have been around for years, you've heard us promoting that as a Chiefs Community Education for quite some time. You see it in the policy framework of 2017, and you see it referenced here in this resolution. And being mindful, this is working with the government pushing the envelope more than we ever did in 2017, because there's hundreds of millions of dollars added to education budgets, but it's still not enough, Mr. Chair. So the whole intent of the regional education agreements was to build a funding methodology that you would then negotiate with the federal government to support your needs, not mine for BCs or anybody else. So there's a tremendous amount of work behind this, Mr. Chair. I'd really encourage all chiefs in Assembly to accept the resolution as it's initially presented, though I'm willing to see this proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the response to the question that was just proposed and some clarification. Before I go to microphone number 2, I just want to check with the resolution team. Are we ready to move forward with the amendment? It looks like they're still working on it. So what we'll do is we'll go to Chief Abbas, microphone number 2.
Good morning. Hello, good morning. No Dagos. First of all, I would like to acknowledge a thank you to AFN for listening to me on one of the concerns that I had on our last assembly. One of the concerns was the resolutions. The resolutions. I wrote a letter to National Chief stating that my disappointment that we weren't able to complete the resolutions. I've suggested that we need to deal with the resolutions right away when we come together on the first day and deal with these resolutions. Until we're done, we're done. We can do the presentations and other topic of discussions. You know, we're kind of falling behind right now too. Like, I don't know if we're gonna cover all the resolutions. On the education topic, I live and reside in fly-in, remote, isolated community. Cost of doing business in my community is more higher than what's happening to the road access First Nations. So that's one of the therefore be it resolved additions I would like to include. And the other thing that I would like to include in the therefore be it resolved is the as we all know, you know, the little kids that go to the school. Some of them have special needs, and they have disability. They have some sort of syndrome. So we need teachers to help them, and we need extra financial resources to hire staff to help these children. So I would like to include, therefore be resolved, the chiefs in Assembly call upon the Government of Canada to immediately revise and enhance the First Nations education funding formula to fully recognize and reflect the realities of remote and fly-in First Nations, including significantly higher operational costs, northern transportation challenges, staffing shortages, specialized learning needs, and the urgent requirement for increased funding to support students living with disabilities. developmental syndromes, learning differences, and other special needs, and to provide sustained resources to hire qualified educational assistants, mental health workers, therapists, and support staff necessary to ensure our students receive equitable and culturally safe education services comparable to provincial standards. That's the addition to the therefore be it resolved.
Thank you, Chief Wabas. So we'll have you work with our resolutions team on the floor just to confirm the requested amendment. I just want to confirm that we can go back to the other one.
We can go to D, E, and then 6.
So mover and seconder, if you can please stand by. The requested amendment are to paragraph 1. That would be under E, correct?
2E and 2D.
So 2E. The addition would be to support the needs and treaty-based models, including but not limited to funding approaches. I'll deal with that one first. You're okay with that? Yes? And mover is good? Thank you.
D is well above it.
Okay, as well, right above it is D. So this would be 2D. Ensure no further reductions are made to First Nations education funding in subsequent years. And are you okay with that as well? We're good? We're good. Thank you. And there's one more. We'll just get you to scroll down. And that is number 6. And there is a removal of the Chiefs Committee on Education. It would now say, call on the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada to meet with First Nations directly to discuss and co-develop, etc. Mover, are you okay with that? You're good? Seconder? Seconder is not okay with that. I'm going to go to the requester of the amendment, which I cannot see, but seconder would prefer to leave it as it is. So what we will do is, okay, yeah, seconder at microphone number 1. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I don't support removing the Chiefs Committee because the Chiefs Committee on Education, the National Indian Education Council, has been in place for decades. And we're purposed to support the Chiefs in Assembly on education, lifelong learning education. So to displace a Chiefs Committee reference in a Chiefs Committee-driven resolution would not be fair to the Chiefs Committee, the National Indian Education Council, or all those others involved in the development of these programs and services, Mr. Chair. That's why I will not accept that removing of the Chiefs Committee.
Okay, thank you. So if there's still, we're not on the same page yet, what I would recommend is maybe if we can take that offline and have that discussion. Microphone 1, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chair, you heard Chief Delbert stand up and say he doesn't want comparability to public education, and the second chief wants comparability to public education in the, added. So there's a conflict there. Can we just please proceed without any amendments? There's plenty of information here to advance things that we're currently doing, plenty of opportunity to advance things more politically and more of a rights-based approach beyond this. But if this resolution isn't passed, Mr. Chair, we're missing a time window to advance these pretty serious program and funding areas. So I'd encourage all chiefs, please accept the resolution as presented.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Thank you very much. And you know, where I'm coming from, Mr. Chair, is that I witnessed the discussions that took place downstairs at Lac Lemay with the minister. And when I asked the chair and I asked the Chiefs Committee on Education which memo went to Cabinet, they couldn't give me a definite answer. So as a chief of my community who has to continue balancing the budgets, if I want an experienced teacher at 15 years, and my tuition is based on, my nominal role is based on the number of students that are there, on how many kids, what kind of years of experience I can higher, I have to balance my budget by saying, I want that 15-year experience. I got to hire a person that's first or second year. Right? But that discussion was little to none. And so the only way that I can guarantee that the interests of education is going to be front and center is to have that represented by First Nations themselves. Because how many more chances are we going to get, or opportunities are we going to have at defending and speaking up for our rights to education? I get home, our bus drivers again don't have the affordability. Right? I'm an independent First Nation. I don't belong to a tribal council. I don't belong to what they call, I sent a letter to FSI not to represent me and represent Thunderchild First Nation. So how do I get represented then at the Chiefs Committee on Education? How do other First Nations get represented? To ensure that we are being treated justly. So if we're here in the spirit of cooperation and understanding, then we shouldn't be blocking resolutions or amendments to resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Miigwech. We'll now turn to the other amendment, and I believe the resolutions team is ready for that. If you can just help me out by, again, highlighting in yellow, that'll make it much easier. So this is the requested amendment.
It's going to go in number 8. And they're just putting it in right now.
So it would be, therefore, be resolved number 8. They're just putting it in right now. So Encore, if I can have you scroll down to the bottom of the resolution, this would be, therefore, be resolved number 8. And I believe they are just putting it in. And once I get confirmation that it's ready, I will read it out and then check with the mover and the seconder. Before we do that, just a quick one. Microphone 1.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just the argument around which version of the 3 versions, the memo to Cabinet that was submitted. In any of the AFN's parliamentary legal advisors will inform you that's behind closed doors, secret doors. We're not made aware whatsoever. J.F. Tremblay, as a Deputy Minister of ISK, worked with us. We co-developed the statements required to inform the memo to Cabinet that would support the policy framework that we put forward. So I want to be really clear, Mr. Chair, none of us have any opportunity of knowing in advance which of the 3 versions are going forward on the memo to Cabinet. None of us, doesn't matter what status we are. We're going to continue pushing for that, but in 2017, that was the limit, Mr. Chair. So I just want to remind everybody, those are parliamentary procedures that are completely out of our hands. We can't influence whatsoever, but JF allowed us to take a step into a closed door like we'd never been before. So we did seriously influence the memo to Cabinet choices, and the one that was ultimately supported was based on the policy framework that we put together in an appendices that was attached to the MC that was approved, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go to draft resolution paragraph 8. It reads, call upon the Government of Canada to immediately revise and enhance the First Nations education funding formula to fully recognize and reflect the realities of remote and fly-in First Nations, including significantly higher operational costs, northern transportation challenges, staffing shortages, specialized learning needs, and the urgent requirement for increased funding to support students living with disabilities, development syndrome, learning differences, and other special needs, and to provide sustained resources to hire qualified educational assistants, mental health workers, therapists, and support staff necessary to ensure our students receive equitable and culturally safe education services comparable to provincial standards. Mover, are you okay with that? Good. Seconder? Microphone number 1, please.
Sorry, Adam. The majority of it is fine. It's that last part where equitable and culturally safe education services comparable to provincial standards. I don't know about you folks, but I'm not satisfied whatsoever with the cultural support that we receive in public schools. So I don't want to be comparable to them at all. So it's just that last piece, Adam. And maybe if we could change the student receive needs-based adequate, sustainable funding and end there?
Thank you. So I'm looking to the Chief Wabas, who made the request for this proposed amendment, and the resolutions team. You're good with that proposed change? Okay. So resolutions team, I hope you got that. We're just going to come back to that. Just once, we'll deal with this first, and then we'll come back to you. Miguel. So I also recognize generally we will go back to the mover and the seconder to provide responses from chiefs that may have questions or comments, so we do that. But I also will say that we like to allow time for any chiefs that wish to speak to a resolution, but at some point we will have to call for a vote and to make a decision.
So it's just a change in the last line, so it says and support staff.
Okay, so the last line would now be therapists and support staff necessary to ensure our probably should be an S, our students receive needs-based, sustainable, and adequate funding. You're okay with that? Mover, are you okay with that? You're good. Thank you. So we have one more speaker, and I believe this will be the final speaker, and then we will call for a vote. Are they still working on your proposed amendment? Microphone 2.
Yeah, sorry about this. No, I'm in agreement with needs-based, right? I'm in agreement with needs-based. But I think that, there's, thinking about it, there's caution, so we would like to take out treaty, from the discussion, from the resolution, right? And needs-based, just for clarity, is that in First Nations country, many of us are starting our starting lines down here, right? The provincial starting lines up here. So how do we bring ourselves up? And that's what each community, each nation identifies through their need, to make sure that they have what they need to bring themselves up, to a starting line that, and to go beyond that. So that's the intent behind the needs-based. So thank you.
So if I understand correctly, if you can please stand by. Up on the screen, we'll go to E. So scroll up, please. There's a reference to treaty. So it currently says support the needs and treaty-based models. So if we understand correctly, are you asking for the reference to treaty-based to be removed? And so now it would read, it's up on the screen, it would now read, support needs-based models, including but not limited to funding approaches. That's the request. Mover, are you okay with that? Seconder? Okay, very good. Thank you. Looks like we're comfortable. Chief, you're okay with that? Are you okay with the resolution now as it is? Okay. Having said that, we've made changes. I don't hear any objections to this resolution. Now that we've made changes, I hear no objections. So if we have consensus, if there's no objections, then we don't need to call for a vote. So I'm going to ask the question. The resolution is before you. Is there any opposition to the resolution? And we're online, so I have to give it 3 calls. Second call, any opposition to the resolution before you? Nothing online. Last call, any opposition? I see none. So with that, the resolution is carried and adopted by consensus. So thank you, Miigwech. I should clarify, resolution as amended. Thank you.
Technical edits there, and then you.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of things. When you go to the voting, if you go to the voting link from yesterday, which just go back to the last email, it gives you a recap of all the previous resolutions. So yesterday we did not have this, but once a resolution is carried by consensus, it actually says carried by consensus. So you will see that once you go back to that voting platform. So if we can have draft resolution number 7 put up on the screen, please. That is the next resolution. Draft resolution number 7. It is moved by Chief Jennifer Brake. Is Chief Brake in the room? Yes, thank you. Seconded by Chief Ira MacArthur. Is Chief MacArthur present? Thank you. Mover and seconder are here. So the resolution is titled, you can go back up, Support for a First Nations Approach to Artificial Intelligence. So the resolution reads, we can scroll down to therefore be it resolved. There have been some changes, but just to let you know that these changes have already been handed out yesterday. You all have a copy, but you will see on the version up on the screen some changes, but I will read the version that is now out there. It reads, therefore be it resolved that the First Nations Chiefs in Assembly 1, direct the Assembly of First Nations, AFN, Chiefs Committee on Languages to work with other relevant AFN sectors and Chiefs Committees to develop a national strategy on the use and governance of artificial intelligence, AI, and First Nations data that includes the identification of areas of benefit and concern by December 2026. Number 2, call on the AFN to submit the Government of Canada First Nations developed policy with strict regulations to protect and empower the use of First Nations data governance in AI in line with First Nations principles of ownership, control, access, and possession, OCAP. These regulations should A, ensure transparency of how any AI is created and operated, B, guarantee that First Nations are compensated for the use of their data and knowledge. C, promote the responsible sharing of First Nations knowledge and culture. And D, secure data and digital sovereignty. 3, call on the Government of Canada to ensure any regulations regarding AI respect First Nations autonomy and self-determination. 4, call on the Government of Canada to acknowledge and collaborate with First Nations to address the instances, particularly in international context, where First Nations' unique rights and perspectives are not considered, such as Canada signing on to the Council of European Framework Convention on Artificial Intelligence and Human Rights, Democracy, and the Rule of Law. 5, call on the Government of Canada to ensure, as it looks to expand the use of AI to create efficiencies in the delivery of government services, that it obtains the free, prior, and informed consent of any First Nations who may be impacted by that use, particularly as it relates to First Nations accessing benefits and essential services, example, access to information requests, Jordan's Principle, and non-insured health benefits. 6, affirm that First Nations will control what data of theirs is shared and how. I'm not sure if that's, sorry, it should be how it is governed and who may access data products. 7, affirm that a national strategy on AI is not intended to detract or hinder First Nations from advancing their regional or AI approaches. 8, call upon the Government of Canada to prioritize and designate dedicated funding for First Nations-led AI and natural languages processing, NLP, language revitalization projects across all national AI investment programs, including those administered through Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. I said the Canada Research Coordinating Committee and the Pan-Canadian AI Strategy. Such funding should A, ensure the funding is consistent with OCAP, and B, recognize Indigenous languages as requiring equitable inclusion within Canada's national investment priorities. 9, call upon the Global Affairs Canada and the Canadian Commission for the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, CCUN, I'll just say CC UNESCO, to work collaboratively with First Nations to advance international partnerships, research networks, and policy frameworks that strengthen the global AI industry's support for Indigenous languages, including championing Indigenous language revitalization within the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organizations, UNESCO, AI ethics, digital heritage, and local Indigenous knowledge systems, LINKS links programs, and B, promoting international standards that protect Indigenous linguistic data from misuse, misrepresentation, and extraction. So that's the resolution. Mover and seconder are here. I'll go to the mover and seconder first if they wish to speak to it. Microphone 2.
Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Chief Jenny Brake of Hollywood First Nation from Otamcook, Newfoundland. I would like to thank everyone for their attention to this important resolution today. Artificial intelligence is an industry that grows exponentially every year. We have already seen how this technology affects our people. Yesterday, we heard in a dialogue session on how AI can be used to hurt and benefit us. We know how AI can be used to steal our culture. We know the significant danger AI presents to our lands and environments. At the same time, we can see how artificial intelligence offers an opportunity for our people. AI can automate tasks that take a lot of time for our leaders and knowledge keepers. AI has been involved in discovery of new medicines and therapies. It has aided in the development of economies. Every year, billions of dollars are being poured into artificial intelligence. AFN has no unified approach on artificial intelligence. A developed position is important as it provides First Nations with some guidance on this incredibly important matter. This resolution calls for the AFN and its Chiefs Committee on Languages to work toward an official position on artificial intelligence. It does not put forward a pro or anti-opinion of AI. It simply provides a mandate to research how artificial intelligence is being used, how it can be used, and whether it should be used. I urge Chiefs to vote yes on this resolution. Artificial intelligence is coming for us, whether we are ready or not. Let's be ready and be in control of our own narrative.
Miguch, thank you. Seconder, Chief MacArthur, microphone 2.
O Matakia Ben, Ira MacArthur, Amigab, De Hongani, Shionate, Nakota, Ayate. Just want to say good morning to each and every one of you, and I just urge the Chiefs to support the resolution as it's been drafted. We've put in a lot of work into it, both from the Chiefs table as well as the technical table as well. So we're just looking for support for this resolution as it stands. Thank you.
Miguch, mover and seconder. So we'll open it up now. Microphone number 1.
Hello, I'm John Jack. I'm the Chief Counselor for the Wait First Nations on Vancouver Island in BC. I just had a question in regards to, I think, number 5. Could you go into more detail in regards to the timelines that we may want to see in regards to finding or achieving free, prior, and informed consent? And I'm wondering if you want to contemplate, like, do it by this time. What I'm worried about when it comes to AI accessing information is that once it accesses the information, it's theirs forever. Like, it's kind of, you can't put the smoke back in the bottle, so to speak. So in regards to, like, our sovereign data about our people, medical information, that sort of thing, once it's released and used by the federal government, it's pretty much theirs forever. So can we have a timeline attached to when this should be achieved? Just because there's parts about that. Thanks.
Thank you. If you can please stand by. I don't know if you have a recommended timeline or if you're proposing, or is that just a question? Microphone 1.
I'm not an expert, so I would just take direction on people who've thought about this more.
Thank you. So I'm going to the mover and seconder who are having a discussion. Can we come back to that? We'll have a discussion on that, but we'll go to the next speaker for now. But please stand by. Microphone, I just want to look around the room. Nobody else? Microphone 1. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gisik Whitlam, Cheryl Casmer, Chief of the Community of Akam in BC. I just have a couple of questions. I guess the first one is not being really familiar with AI or the OCAP. Is OCAP inclusive of addressing intellectual property? I don't see anything in here that's specific to intellectual property, and I think that that's important. The other thing that I wanted to share is similar to the comments made by the gentleman before me, specifically around Chat GPT. We've had a conversation at our nation table, leadership table, about developing some AI policies, because we found out that if you use that Chat GPT, there's a proviso that says that they own the information. So when you're using it to help you develop materials related to language and culture, or any other issue that may be sensitive or specific to your nation, just knowing that once you do that, they own it. And so I appreciate that we want to try to get ahead of this, the head of the system, and be able to have something developed that's specific to meeting our needs and our privacy and our intellectual property. But I just, caution that we've been probably all been using these systems that are already owning our property. So I guess in closing, it's just really important for us to make sure that we create something that's going to be secure and that's going to protect our information. Thank you.
Migach. So before we continue, there's been some sort of technical questions that have been raised, and I'm not sure if those technical questions can be responded to by the mover and seconder, but I know they're having a discussion. I don't want to go too far because they need to hear what the questions are, so they are having a huddle, so I'm going to pause for a few seconds. So we've now had two speakers ask some questions. I know the last question was some clarification regarding OCAP, but also ownership of information once it goes into AI. For example, the example used was Chat GPT. So, mover. Microphone 2, please.
So to respond to your questions, the timeline would be December 2026 for a framework, and OCAP does include intellectual property, and the chiefs would work together to determine how the framework would look.
Thank you. So I believe that responds to both the speakers. I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. So the last speaker was at microphone 1. I would look online, nobody online, so I'll come back to microphone 2.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Archie Webas, One Lake First Nation. I think, the new technology, artificial intelligence is next. It's going to be online. USA is building it, like the AI infrastructure they're currently building that AI framework. It's about a group of computers, like a computer system, like 2 blocks or 1 square mile of the electronics. And it takes a lot of power, and it takes a lot of cooling, like water, that kind of thing. So that's the future. That's the future we'll be going with this. AI technology will come. No matter what we do, no matter what we say, it's going to be here. So, do we have any control? I don't know. I don't know if we have any control over that. The only concern that I have is I don't know if AI mines data. It probably mines data through public domains on these websites and data systems, and that's where it looks and finds the information that you're looking for. So any website, for example, AFN, has agenda and resolutions, it can find it, no problem. So what do we do? Like we want to secure and protect at least personal data. That's my concern. Like, is there a way to secure personal data from AI mining personal data? Yeah, thank you.
Miigwech, Chief Wabas. So I think that was a general question and consideration as we deliberate AI in this resolution. So I think that's a comment, more of a comment for people to consider. Miigwech. Microphone 1.
Chief Kelsey Jacko, Cold Lake First Nation, and I just want to give thanks for the ones that lifted pipe this morning. I'm in support of this resolution. Any federal engagement on AI needs to respect Treaty 6 jurisdiction, and no pan-Indigenous national strategy should not automatically include Treaty 6. Treaty 6 must demand transparency from Indigenous Services Canada regarding their current use of AI and process in Jordan's principles applications, ensuring our children are not subject to algorithmic bias. Masi.
Miigwech, thank you. I don't see anybody else approaching, nobody online as well. There has been some clarifications, so I didn't hear any objections. So I just want to confirm whether we have consensus or not, or whether we go to a vote. So the question is, the resolution is before you. Is there any opposition to the resolution? Second call, is there any opposition to the resolution? I'm looking around the room. I know chiefs are often in the back as well, and I'm looking online. Any opposition to the resolution? I see none, so with that, the resolution is carried and adopted by consensus. So thank you to the mover and seconder. I'll go, we are scheduled to be doing the special honoring for the late Elijah Harper at 10:30. We do have a resolution that actually deals with that, but I'm going to deal with one more resolution probably before that. So we're going to go to draft resolution number 9. This is in your packages. It's also available electronically. This is draft resolution number 9. If I can have it put up on the screen, please. There it is. The mover is Chief Cheryl Casimir, who I know is here. Yep, thank you. Seconded by Chief Heidi Gravel, who is also present. Thank you. The resolution is titled Reestablishing Intertribal Harvesting Protocols. So we'll go down to therefore be it resolved. It reads, therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly 1. Recognize and affirm the inherent right of First Nations peoples to defend their territories, govern according to their own laws, establish and uphold intertribal protocols governing access to and limitation of harvesting of plants, animals, and other materials within their territories. 2. Call upon all First Nations to recognize historic treaties between nations by offering education to their people on how to respect the harvesting laws and protocols of other nations and how to seek consent before accessing resources within another nation's territory. 3. Direct the Assembly of First Nations to gather samples of educational materials on harvesting laws and protocols that can be used to raise awareness and to promote respect for intertribal protocols and to share best practices rooted First Nations law and stewardship. 4. Direct the National Chief and Assembly of First Nations to advocate for recognition of intertribal harvesting protocols in federal, provincial, and territorial policy and law consistent with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And I believe that's the entire resolution. It looks like it is. It's not required, but if the mover and seconder wish to speak to the resolution, there is an opportunity. So microphone number 1, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be long. I think that the resolution is pretty self-explanatory. I also believe that this is an issue that many nations across the country are facing. I've heard from many other chiefs and leaders about this situation taking place where our protocols, some not written, are not being respected, and that we're bringing this forward so that we can put some emphasis and the spotlight back on to how we've always conducted ourselves with each other for millennia. And it's not, we're seeing that it's not happening, it's not being followed through in some instances. For example, there is a medicine plant in our territory that seems to be quite popular these days, where we have nations coming into the territory and harvesting. We don't have a problem with people coming and harvesting. What we do have a problem with is that we're not being sought out at the outset to seek some consent, as well as there may be opportunities for trade. We don't know that, but if you just come into the territory and do what you want to do without meeting with the leadership or the elders, it does create some problems. What we've also found is that there's a number of people coming into the territory for commercial purposes. And these individuals who come in for commercial purposes don't have any respect really for the medicine. And so the roots get damaged, there's garbage that's left behind, and it's really sad to see. It's also very disrespectful to our people, to our elders. We all have a responsibility to be good stewards of the lands, and we all take that responsibility seriously within our respective territory. And so all we're asking through this is that we be cognizant that we have protocols amongst us, and that we just need to breathe life back into them if we haven't already done so. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder at microphone 1.
Kisukyukiat Ukaklik Heidi Gravel, Nasukan for Yakarak Nukliat First Nation. I think just to continue on to what Nasukan Cheryl was talking about, to add in the piece of the federal responsibility around jurisdiction. So aside from this, there's still the issue of control and oversight, and without having these in place with the multiple ministries working together to provide that opportunity for us to steward in an appropriate manner, understanding that we are a nation that never surrendered our land or our rights. We do not operate under a treaty, and what we're finding is the First Nations that are lacking the proper teachings and protocols of peoples that don't understand the historical nature of our culture. It's creating a system of events where the government has imposed these consultation frameworks that lack the cultural integrity that hasn't been included in there or even thought of. So I think that those meetings are happening right now. The work is happening. There's chiefs at the table. But that needs to ensure that that's enshrined through that to help mitigate some of these situations going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Gravel, for that. So the floor is now open. Microphone 1.
Thank you, John Jack, Chief Councillor for the Hawaiian First Nations. I very much appreciate this motion for what it is. So I think I just have a question in regards to this. And part of the communications that I have from members of other nations as elected Chief Councillor are people who want to come into our territory and harvest, mostly go fishing and that sort of thing. But in our system, it's not the elected council that manages those things. It's our hereditary leadership, the Hatwea. And they're the ones who manage those kind of bilateral conversations. I'm wondering if the motion already contemplates in some way the creation of a system where nations can look up who to talk to from each nation. Like, I've learned more in the recitals of this motion about Tanaka protocols, and now we'll follow them if it ever comes up. But can there be a way for the bilateral relationships between nations, as well as the way nations can interact with one another, to understand without having to go through a whole rigmarole of back and forth? Like, I'd love to be able to look up who to speak to or how to already apply for cultural exchange of resources or that sort of thing. So I don't have an amendment or anything. I'm just wondering if if that's already contemplated, or is that something that hasn't been thought of here? Thanks.
Thank you. Chief Councillor, so I think that's a consideration that the mover and seconder of the resolution, I don't know if you want to respond, but the consideration to take that back is what I'm hearing. Is there a response? We're okay? But that point is taken. Thank you. Microphone 1.
Chief Kelsey Jacko, Cold Lake First Nations. I was brought up, treaty has no boundaries or whatnot. Some of our territories overlap. I'm in agreement you should get permission. But I just have a concern with the Métis issue with Alberta. The provinces engaging the Métis with protected areas and whatnot. I don't think that's right because they're not rights holders. We're the true right holders of these lands. So I just thought I'd comment and be nice to get some wording around that or something. But I think you need permission if you're entering one's territory. Merci.
Merci. So the question or the comment is that this would not include Métis. Are you proposing that that's in the amendment, or is that a comment you're making that needs to be?
Well, it's kind of troublesome, I was always proposing to have a seat at the table, and it seems like the province is doing stuff on their own, and I'm not in agreement, with the Métis doing protected areas. The colonizer came here, and 9 months later, there's Métis. So I just thought I'd state that, but I don't know how to fight that. They are our brothers and sisters, but I just thought I had to state it.
Miigwech, Chief Jacko, a very strong statement, comment that has been stated and recorded for the public record. Microphone 1.
Good morning, Chief Sonny Batiste. I just, from APTN First Nation, sorry. I'd just like to get more clarification when they say recognize and affirm the inherent rights of First Nation people. Do they mean as individual or as the First Nation itself?
Thank you. So as it's worded, it does say inherent right of First Nations peoples with a capital P. So I'm going to sort of hint at a possible response, but I'm going to look it to the mover and seconder. It's not my place to answer the questions here. Microphone 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that question. Just for clarification purposes, it's about the nation who is responsible for defending. But every individual, though, has a responsibility. Every member of your nation has a responsibility, but the nation overall has that inherent right to enter into those protocols, and so that's what we're speaking to here in this resolution.
Miigwech. So I haven't heard any objections, some questions, some good dialogue, statements. So I don't see anybody else online. We'd like to come to a decision. We're almost there. Chief Wabas, microphone 1.
When we tried to map, Chief Wabas, when we try to map our traditional inherent land, we have lots of boundaries. Like in Ontario MNR gave us the trap line boundaries, and there's treaty boundaries overlapping our our traditional homelands, and also there's provincial boundaries. I'm kind of envisioning telling the children, and this is our land, okay? Based on what information are we going to use to educate our children? Is it going to be First Nations traditional land boundaries, or treaty land boundaries, or provincial boundaries, or, I'm not really clear on the, when it comes down to overlapping issues on the land. And then we're trying to educate our people to protect these lands. At the same time, this could be a treaty boundary, but we go beyond treaty boundary lines, right? So I'm just kind of curious on this education part. What are we going to tell our young people and our children in terms of what is our traditional land, what is our boundaries of traditional land? Yeah, thank you.
So thank you for the comments, Miigwech. I don't think there was a direct question, but it was a question for things to be considered as you move forward and possible implementation of the resolution is what I'm hearing. So Miigwech, microphone 2.
Chief Leanne Wilson, Okanagan Indian Man. Yeah, we have a problem with the Tanaka Nation government, and we have a problem with the Tanaka Nation map within the BC treaty process. It overlaps into unceded Syilx territory, and we could prove that the Tanaka have not been there since time immemorial. So I have a problem with that, with that statement on behalf of the entire Syilx Nation. So we'll be voting against this this resolution.
Thank you, Miigwech. I do see maybe a guest at microphone 2. This is a Chiefs Assembly. The way we know how to recognize a chief or proxy representative is the red lanyard, so I don't see the red lanyard. The other option is to have a chief approach and have you recognized. That is the other option. So we do recognize chiefs and proxy representatives with the red lanyards. So this, again, that is the protocol that has been established, and that's the protocol that we've been given to follow. But I do not see any other chiefs or proxy representatives in the room or online virtually. And I just want to, Chief Wilson, who just spoke, and I know you're in the back somewhere, I think you had some concerns. So we don't have unanimous consent for this? It doesn't sound like it? Okay, thank you. So at this point, again, we will follow our protocols. We do recognize chiefs and proxy representatives with the red lanyards. I don't see any that have approached, so I will now call for a vote. If I can have on, okay, thank you. Chief at microphone number 2.
Bonjour. Chief Leon Mandaman, Skitazaligan Independent First Nation. I'd like to reserve my time for the speaker behind me.
Miigwech. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Kitchigisi, Councillor Jonathan Kitchigisi from Dataskriak Cree Nation. And it's my first time attending this, so I've been just watching on TV. But I've been hearing things about the land and protection of community, and that's what we have been doing back home. And the government, the Canadian government, does not stand in our way when you try to protect our community. And how I've grown up was from the land. I did not go to school. Well, I went up to grade 7. So I'm not very good at how those and what you say, those on treaty land and stuff like that. I believe that I am a person of this land, Turtle Island. I believe I have a right to go all over Canada with my brothers, all over Canada, as an open border. It was not us that put those borders on those lands. I believe nothing that the history says is true at all. Because I have found things that say otherwise. You know, and then I am what you call grassroots, I guess you could say. And then I was put in this position as a councillor to do what I can to help the people. In other words, there is no time to sit on our hands to try and fit into the white man's law. I think all of us should be under the umbrella of our ancestors, regardless of what it is, land, law, and everything. Because our ancestors got us to here where we are right now, since time immemorial. If it weren't for their perseverance and resiliency, we would not be here. So that's why we cannot forget our ancestors, because they are all of us. We are people of the land. We were from here. Creator put us here. We are people of the land. We are not First Nations. We are people of this land, literally. And I wanted to share that. And I have brothers all across Canada, and I'd like to say hi to them. And when I first met the Brothers of Canada, it was in that next building. When I realized how many people were around me, I got up and I said, I can sleep a lot better now that I know you guys are out there. I guess I would say more, but
Miigwech, thank you. So at this point, we have the resolution. I will ask Encore to please open the polls. And the voting will be taking place in just a few seconds. Chiefs, proxy representatives, you should be getting an email. It's the same site that it takes you to from yesterday. If you don't get the email right away, it's the same email from yesterday. But it looks like votes are coming in. Again, your option is to vote in favor, in opposition, or to abstain. So we will give it a few minutes for the voting for this resolution. I know it's 10:29 on the agenda. At 10:30, we have the special honoring of the late Elijah Harper. Miwe gawi kanoa chinch hawe gagiwi utanang gaginiga nichtamagits gagiwi gumachanoch gawi nima utskunganink egomina gaginiga nichtamagits ma Manitoba gumaunink egomina Canada gumaunink with nakay gagitanabits egodashiwe gaw kanoa chinch then the mawag mo bijawach awanog yue gam kawan dawan chawe Elijah Harper ganindaban. So we will have the special honoring very shortly. There is a resolution that we were hoping to get to that mandates a special honoring. It's titled Honoring the Legacy of Elijah Harper through a Monument and AFN Advocacy. We will get to that resolutions when we continue. When we continue with resolutions, we will get to that resolution, but we will be going to the special honoring. We are taking some time for the voting. We do have staff here in the room from the distribution table, working hard to make sure that you can vote. If you are having challenges, technical challenges here in the room, raise your hand, and staff with the neon lanyards will come and assist. So we have a hand raised in the back here as well, to my left, towards the back, as well to my left in the middle. We want to make sure that everyone is able to vote. I know we have new delegates today that were not part of yesterday's session, so it's the same process we've been doing several assemblies now. Online voting, there's a link that you receive. You get an email. Once you've officially registered as a delegate, you will get an email. As part of that email, there is a 6-digit code that is your own personal code. You use that when you vote. So basically, every time we vote, you get an email. You click on the link, you open it up. There is the PIN number, or sorry, the private code, 6 digits. You can cut and paste, use that, and cast your vote. Once you vote, you submit it, and you won't be able to vote again on that particular resolution. So I just waiting for an indication that everyone in the room. Anybody else? I saw a hand in the back earlier. Anybody else having any issues? I think we're okay. Okay, we still have, we're still resolving something here in the back. We'll just give it another minute. So again, we will, thank you. We're good in the back. Anybody else? I don't want to rush people. I want to make sure we can do this properly. Again, if you're online, joining virtually, in the chat, you should see a phone number as well as an email address that you can contact if you're having technical issues. Are we good? Looks like we're good. I see one chief in the back, so I'll just give it a second. As a basic na biha. As a gigate. So we're just waiting on one more here in the room. We're good? No? That was a wave. I thought that was a thumbs up. So again, this is a process that we've started several assemblies ago. It's created some efficiencies in terms of voting. Are we okay? We can proceed? Thank you. Okay, Encore, if you can close the polls, please. Voting is now closed. I will get the results in front of me here fairly quickly. And the resolution before you, if I can have the results up on the screen, please. And there it is, 89.6% in favor. So the resolution is carried. Miwe, thank you very much. I will now turn it over to my colleague Cedric for the next session, and I'll just keep plugging away.
Well, Adam. So now we will be moving into the next part of our agenda, which is an honoring in the memory of Elijah Harper. As mentioned by Adam, there is a draft resolution 37 honoring the legacy of Elijah Harper through a monument and AFN advocacy that we will be getting to shortly after. I would like to call up, and I see him in our corner, if Councillor Ronnie Beardy is available. We have Councillor Ronnie Beardy from Garden Hill First Nation, which will be here to honor Elijah. And he will be supported by family members and community members from Elijah's community. I will look towards our team and also to our drum group if they would approach. We're getting you set up with our microphones too, just to make sure. So Councillor Beardy. And I just want to take the time also to recognize the work from Zach. Don't know where you're hiding, and Larry helping us with protocol, just making sure that we're going through this in a good way with the good medicines and the good process.
Always. Good morning, Chief and Councils, proxies, and all the people that are here. It's an honor to be standing in front of you to bring you a message. I have people standing behind me that are very close to what I'm going to be presenting today. I will not have time to introduce all of them because I only have a few minutes. But I'm going to go right into it. It's about the legacy of Elijah Harper.
and all that he has stood for, to do the work that he needed to do while he was here as a representative for all the people and Indigenous people across Canada. We people standing behind would like to initiate a very important thing to happen, and that is to create a statue to honor the legacy of Elijah Harper. This is what I prepared for you. This is just a base of to realize the importance of this presentation. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to share something very important to myself, the Chief Sam Nutt of Red Sucker Lake, and the Island Lake people, and perhaps to all the Indigenous people in Canada. The legacy of Elijah Harper. It's important that we start by sharing something with you that our grandparents told me. Something they never lied about. We have lived here since time immemorial. We were here before the settlers and the colonizers. We were here to pass down the old stories that are older than any road or any building surround us. It's about remembering who was always here and honoring the truth. Because we all know that history doesn't necessarily begin with the records. It begins with the heartbeat and the stories of our people. Let me take you back to a cold December morning in 1890. At Wounded Knee, the massacre in South Dakota. The snow was deep. The air was sharp with fear and gunfire. In the middle of all that chaos, an elderly woman, Lakota woman, they called her Singing Wind, began dancing. She sang. Not a cry, not a war cry, not a scream, a song, a prayer, a promise. She sang for the children hiding under the blanket. She sang for the warriors falling in the forest. She sang for the future she might never see. And in that moment, one woman became a fire. Thank you. Her voice did not stop the bullets, but it lit a spirit of resilience in every heart. Heard it. That resilience didn't die then that day. It lives in us. It lives here in this room. It will live on in our children and their children, no matter what storm comes. Because Indigenous people never stopped surviving. We faced removal, residential schools, broken treaties, stolen children, and still we rise. Still we speak. Still we sing. Now let me tell you about another act of bravery and power. Around 1990, the leaders of Canada were trying to pass the Meech Lake Accord, a constitutional deal that would have changed the future of this country. But there was a problem. It ignored Indigenous voices and did not involve us. The Indigenous peoples of Canada, in discussions surrounding it, did not involve us. It only recognized the English and the French as the founding nations of Canada. It pretended we, the Indigenous people, didn't matter. To pass the Manitoba legislature unanimous consent was needed, meaning all the politicians in the room had to say yes. And then one man stood up, Elijah Harper, a humble man from Red Sucker Lake, Manitoba, and Chinook Nation, Red Sucker Lake. He stood up. A soft-spoken man from Red Sucker Lake and Chinook Nation, with a gentle smile and a feather in his hand. He did not shout. He did not argue. He simply raised the feather and said no. That was it. One word, one feather, one man. With 12 days before the ratification deadline for the accord, he stood up for our people each day, despite the ridicule that was thrown at him. Elijah stood firm. Because sometimes to stand up for what we believe is right and just. Means being the only one to say no, even saying yes was an easy way out. Elijah didn't do it for fame. He did it for every Indigenous child who would grow up with their rights protected. He did it. He did every elder who taught him, your voice is power. Just like singing wind at wounded knee, Elijah stood in his truth and gave hope to Indigenous people across Canada. So when we talk about resilience, we are not just talking about surviving. We're talking about singing wind, dancing in the snow. We're talking about Elijah Harper holding a feather in defiance. We're talking about us right now, carrying their spirit forward. You don't need a stage. You don't need permission. All you need is your voice to be heard in one critical moment. One no when the world expects silence. One song when the world expects surrender. Elijah Harper reminded us that power is always there, it always has been. And now, because of Elijah Harper, it is time. It is time. It is time for us, because Elijah Harper did it, to put it in stone, in place where the wind can carry his name. It is time to build a monument in his honor, a proud, visible tribute to the man who said no, so that future children walking by will ask, who is that man with the feather? And we will tell them, he was one of us. He said no. And because he did, our voice was heard. It's time to secure his legacy so that the future generations will never forget they have a voice, that one person can stand, that one word can change everything, that resilience is not a memory, but something in us all. Let this monument rise, not as a relic of the past, but as a beacon for the future. Let it stand where the sun hits every morning and where the snow settles in the winter. Because Elijah Harper didn't just stop in the court, he started a movement of resilience. And now, it's our turn to carry it forward. So let's walk out of here today, not just remembering the past, but building a future. One voice, one feather, one song at a time. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that the message sinks into all the Indigenous people across Canada, because it's important for you to pass on the message to our future generation. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I thank you for the people that have shared this with me. Thank you. Thank you. And now, I'm going to present a blanket to Elijah Harper's daughter, handed over to me by our National Grand Chief, Cindy Woodhouse. On behalf of all the people in Canada, the Native Indigenous people, we give you this blanket. Holly.
That's a big blanket. Bonjour, Hanin, Danse, Numenendan Genima, Epizan, and Nunagoyans Bando, Hidian, Genin Bangi Gegun. Nunaskumut Nawaki Nagapite Uta, Kakstun Soina Goma, Numenendan, Wabnogoma. Hi, my name's Holly Harper. Elijah Harper was my dad. I was told that we were be given 5 minutes, and I was saying, well, geez, it took my dad 10 days to say no. So I'll take the 5 minutes, I guess. Thank you, Ronnie, Cindy, and Kyra, my cousin Darren Harper, my uncle Fred, my daughter Kaylee, my chief Sam, and our Grand Chief Alex and Alvin. Thank you. I just wanted to give you a little personal insight into Elijah's life as his daughter. It was hard not having, I won't say not having a father, but not him being present, because I had to share him with a nation. There are times when I didn't see him for a long time, and when he did come home, he was exhausted. But he still didn't sleep at night because you could see the wheels turning on his head. How do I help my people? I knew he struggled with a lot. His heart was so big. He had a lot of love for his people, tremendous love, and that's why he did what he did. I remember being in Winnipeg when Meech Lake was being challenged in the legislature in Manitoba. I heard so many people say, I'm proud, I can walk with my head held high now. Our people walked strong. It was amazing to see thousands of people rally to the side of my dad. I couldn't believe it. I was so amazed by it. I was only 16 at the time, but I knew something momentous was happening at that time. It was a good day to be brown. Yes, it was. He raised and instilled in me the values of our people, to continue with fortitude and strength, to keep going. The legacy that my father holds is something I hold dear. It was difficult walking, how would I say, being careful, because I represented who he was as well, and I was proud to be his daughter. There are so many people out there that I met throughout my time walking around and visiting people, and they all have wonderful things to say about my dad. I do too. I love them. I really miss my dad. He left us too soon. Too soon. He was 64. Too soon, a lot of years. But when Creator calls us home, he calls us home. I just want to say thank you for listening to me, and keep walking in strength. Continue. He did say that he did his trailblazing for the youth, and let's continue supporting our youth. Let's listen to the youth, because they are the ones that will carry us through to continue our fight. Hi,
So again, as our guests are closing up, I just want to remind the Assembly that there is draft resolution 37, honoring the legacy of Elijah Harper through a monument and AFN advocacy, will be presented at this Assembly in the coming days. Again, and I just want to recognize our speaker, Councillor Ronnie Beardy, and that medicine and those stories that you shared. And to your daughter, Elijah's daughter, thank you for being here with us. We will now be moving on to our next point in the Assembly, and I will invite over my co-chair, Véronique.
Ndio, bonjour, hi. Bonjour, donc la prochaine discussion qui va avoir lieu, ça va être sur le projet de loi S2. On va avoir une discussion avec 4 personnes, puis c'est vraiment un moment pour les écouter, puis plus tard, demain, on va pouvoir en parler davantage. Il va y avoir la ministre Mandigo Massi qui va parler aujourd'hui, mais elle va être de retour demain également avec une période de questions et réponses. Donc demain, si vous avez des questions pour la ministre, ce sera le moment. Aujourd'hui, c'est plus en mode présentation, puis il va également avoir une discussion autour possiblement d'une résolution autour du projet de loi S2, donc il y aura aussi l'occasion pour les chefs de parler du projet de loi à ce moment-là. So for the next discussion, we have a plenary on Bill S2 and the second generation cutoff. We have 4 people with us to discuss this matter. So we have Drew Lafon, Sharon McIver, Honorable Mandigo Masti, as well as Senator Paul Prosper. So it will be an opportunity to listen to what they have to say. We have an hour with them. And tomorrow we also have Mandigo Masti that will be back, and it will be a moment to ask questions to her. For the moment, for this presentation, it's really more a presentation. So for the questions, it will be for tomorrow. And we also have a discussion about the resolution on Bill S2, so it will also be an opportunity for the chiefs to discuss this matter as well. So without further waiting, I will invite the 4 speakers on the stage. So we have Drew Lafon with us, Sharon McIver, Honorable Mandigo Masti, as well as Senator Paul Prosper. Do I see them? Do we see them? Yeah. We'll wait for a little bit for them to come up on the stage. I also, while they are coming, I want to remind you that we have the Circle of Trade as well on in the other room, and we also have a mental wellness room if ever you need a wellness break, smudge. There's a mental wellness room, I think on room 207, if I'm right. I will confirm and get back to you on that, but 207, I'm pretty sure. And I see Senator Paul Prosper coming on the stage. Microphone number 2.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to thank the Assembly for allowing us to say something on behalf of Elijah Harper's recognition this afternoon. We would like to make an announcement. I want to ask Wally McKay to say a few words and so forth. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Wally McKay. 30 years ago, I was asked by Elijah Harper to be his principal organizer for the 1995 Sacred Assembly. He came to me on beginning of September, for me to organize it. I asked him when. He said, I would like to do it before Christmas. And I said, Elijah, you don't know what you're asking for. It's only 3 months. We proceeded to organize on December 6th to the 9th of 1995. We had over 3,000 registrations for him to conduct the Sacred Assembly. I just want to let the delegation know that in January 23, 24th, and 25th in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, we are convening the commemorative 1995 Sacred Assembly, and this gathering will be the calling on all the spiritual leaders, our traditional spiritual leaders, and Canada's mainland Christian leaders, to begin a dialogue on and asking the question, what have you done for the last 30 years on the vision that was given to us by Elijah Harper? We have a website, www.commemorating1995 Sacred Assembly, and I welcome each one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Telwing, for this intervention about Elijah Harper and the website as well. Okay, so we're now ready to go into the discussion about the Bill S2. So I will invite our first speaker, who is Drew Lafond, partner with the law firm MLT Aikens.
Thanks for the introduction. Danse Kakiao. Drew Lafond and Sigasun, Maskegale Kotsinia. Mio Keksepaya, Ginanas Kumtanawa, the Piwi Tapmi Egg, Anoska Kiskak, Ota, Kamamawi Egg, Netpate Moon, Nento Magawian, Kapik Squatikok, Gakia Giawa, the Pakse Mongwe ask, Kapik Squatikok, Danse Totaman. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak to today's assembly. As mentioned in my opening, I'm Drew Lafond. I'm a partner with the law firm MLT Aikens. MLT Aikens has been retained by the Assembly First Nations as legal counsel on the matter of Bill S2. And I'm here to provide a quick update and an explanation of the submissions to the Standing Senate Committee of the Assembly of First Nations and the basis upon which the Assembly made its submissions. Bill S2 in its current form is the most recent iteration and the most recent articulation of some housekeeping amendments which were introduced under a former bill, the predecessor Bill C-38. Bill C-38 dealt with some housekeeping items, for the most part, specifically with respect to the ability of Indigenous or Indian individuals to have their name pulled from the register, to update some offensive historical language regarding mentally incompetent Indians, and to address amendments which were mandated by the court in our RENIC list, which was a decision that was brought forward regarding entitlement to Indian registration. The bill in its current form is very different from the bill that was originally introduced in the Senate. And that's because there were a number of modifications, amendments, after hearing from over 50 witnesses before the Standing Senate Committee, one of which was our National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. And this is where the bill forks off, or the discussion regarding entitlement to registration forks off into two very different directions. The first direction, and one I'll just touch on very, very briefly, is with respect to Indigenous citizenship. Now, I want to be clear that Bill S2 does not touch on Indigenous citizenship. We've heard a lot from chiefs, representatives, and staff over the last few days about some confusions about what is in Bill S2 and what it results in, and what it doesn't touch on is Indigenous citizenship. You're born with the inherent jurisdiction over citizenship as an Indigenous person. Nothing in Bill S2 does anything to augment, relinquish, or derogate from that original inherent right that you have over jurisdiction. And I want to be clear about that because the discussion regarding jurisdiction and the discussion regarding the enactment or exercise of your rights inherently, exclusively over jurisdiction is something that you carry as an Indigenous person, and it's nothing that we're going to be discussing today in the content of Bill S2, although there will be some amendments that we'll be discussing through the AFN and throughout the course of the week here about how we can improve the bill in that regard. So we fork off into the next direction about what the bill is actually about, and it's entirely about Indian status. The position of the Assembly of First Nations in this regard is informed by the history of Indian status, about where we were, how we got into the position that we are today over the last 158 years of Indian registration, and where the AFN sees its role in advocating for change on behalf of the nations here today. I think it bears repeating that we do have to spend a minute on the history of Indian status, its purposes, and how it made its way into law today. Indian status, in its original form, is about the Crown determining on behalf of Indigenous peoples who is and who is not an Indian. Now, that exercise of the Crown goes all the way back to the 1850s, and you can trace it back to an act called the Gradual Civilization Act. The Gradual Civilization Act had one purpose, and that was the purpose of civilizing Indians, civilizing First Nations to a point where they were deemed to be fit to participate in Canadian society. That original intention of the Crown was to bring forward a formula for determining who was and who was not an Indian, and it was in the original Indian Act in 1867 when we started to see what the Crown's intentions were through the language of the Indian Act. And generally, and I'll just pull up some of the wording here, in the old Indian Act, back to 1867, in order to qualify as an Indian, the term was defined as a male person of Indian blood. Where that term came from, or where the concept of blood came from, was heavily informed by the thought process of the day that Indians were biologically inferior savages, barbarians, people who did not have the capacity within themselves to be able to participate in Canadian society. And if that blood was diluted to a certain point where you were deemed fit to be able to participate in society, you were enfranchised. You were removed from the community, and you were entitled to certain privileges of a Canadian citizen. Now, we've seen different incarnations of the blood quantum formula develop over the last 158 years. A very recent one, which has been the subject of ongoing litigation, at the helm of one of our participants here, Sharon McIver, was the 1985 amendments, obviously, Bill C-31, which introduced a concept of the second generation cutoff rule. I won't go into depth about the content of the second generation cutoff rule. Suffice to say is that it is exclusively informed by blood quantum, and specifically how much blood you can pass on to your descendants. To the extent that your blood becomes too diluted, you do not have the ability, or you lose the ability, to transmit your status. And again, I do want to stress that while this bill is only about Indian status and it is not about Indigenous self-determination or Indigenous jurisdiction over citizenship, Indian status is extraordinarily important. My hat's off to Sharon McGovern. She's been fighting this battle for over 4 decades. She's brought this case, she's brought her facts, her case, and the circumstances of her family before the British Columbia Supreme Court, the British Columbia Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court of Canada. It was before the British Columbia Supreme Court that the court held, quote unquote, the intangible aspects of status relate to a sense of cultural identity. Despite the imposition of Indian Act regimes, the original First Nations concepts of identity have survived and remain a powerful source of identity. However, the concept of Indian has come to exist as a cultural identity alongside traditional concepts. The concept of Indian has become and continues to be imbued with significance in relation to identity that extends far beyond entitlement to particular programs. The existence of status, the existence of a categorization is still a very powerful indication of belonging within the communities because we've internalized that as communities over the past century and a half. That has become a powerful influence in our lives, a powerful influence over our identity, and why this is such a sensitive topic when we come here today. Now, the position of the Assembly of First Nations against that backdrop was to advocate for the introduction of amendments to the last round of negotiations to Bill S2 to abolish the second generation cutoff rule. The position of the Assembly of First Nations was that blood quantum calculations that we're currently dealing with under the current versions of the Indian Act are having a harmful effect on our populations. Some populations have communities who up to 40% of their members, my own community in Muskeg Lake Cree Nation is over 30% of our members, carry 6-2 or half-blood status and don't have the ability to independently transmit status to their descendants, which will result in what Stuart Clatworthy decades ago already warned us against, was a gradual reduction followed by a very accelerated process of the extinction of Indian status in our communities. That was one position that the AFN, or one outcome that the AFN was not prepared to endure. I warn against incremental changes to the Indian Act. The late and the great Honorable Senator Murray Sinclair worked very hard and advocated for the end of the second generation cutoff rule as a harmful legacy of the Indian Act and the blood quantum formula. Back in 2017, I had mentioned before the Standing Senate Committee that incremental changes to Section 6 of the Indian Act while maintaining the second generation cutoff rule was essentially a personification of the mythical beast, the Hydra beast. If you cut off one of its heads, 2 grow in its place. Making the incremental changes to the blood quantum formula in the Indian Act results in further consequential changes and has and continues to result in those changes generationally. Appreciating the saying, we can't use the master's tools to take down the master's house. This is still a very important conversation for us to have as an assembly because we need to talk about what we do with the second generation cutoff rule and how the Assembly of First Nations will take action going forward. That's it for my presentation. I'm out of time today, but thank you very much.
Thank Mr. Lafont. So our next speaker is Sharon McIver. She is I would say a leading Indigenous activist fighting for the rights of Indigenous women.
Good afternoon, or actually, it's good morning, I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm Sharon McIver, and I want to thank the AFN for inviting me to come and talk today. I have a lot to say, so I better get motor mouthing here. I come from, I'm Ilakatmach from South Central British Columbia. I live and work on the land that I belong to. I also was born there. My mom and dad were born there. My mom's family, time out of memory, have been born there. My children have been born there. My grandchildren have been born there, and 3 out of 4 of my great-grandchildren have been born there. And we've all been born within a 20-kilometer radius of each other. So my roots go long and deep in my home, my community. I have had a lot of work, activist work, and putting my mind to when did I do my first activist thing like civil disobedience. It was July of 1968. I was not quite 20 years old at that time. And now fast forward to 2025, and I've been doing it for that length of time. I know Drew gave you a little bit of my background, but we did a lot of work with Indian Rights for Indian Women, Native Women's Association of Canada, and a whole lot of other things. In 1985, when Bill C-31 was put into place, a lot of that was the women, very important women, Mary Tuac, Surly, Jeanette Laval, and many other women that haven't had their names written down to try to straighten out this mess that the Canadian government put us into. I brought a case, the McIver case, and was successful. Actually, what we're doing today with S2, the judge in my case we had put all of the things that had to happen before the discrimination came out of the Indian Act. What we're doing today with S2 is actually in the decision of my case. That had to change, but of course, here we are. That was, we got 1985 with C-31. We've got 2010 with C-3. That was the McIver Amendment, and that's when the judge said, these are all the things that we had identified. These are all the things that have to be changed in the Indian Act in order to take out all of the discrimination. They did very narrow changes, and as a result, there was probably maybe about 125,000 women and their descendants that were able to get status as a result of my case, the McIver case. In 2017, another case came along, and our group that we've had together for over 40 years trying to get the changes out in the discrimination out of the Indian Act worked very successfully with the Senate, and we amended a bill that was very, very narrow, and were able to get what we called 6-1A all the way, and many women that were discriminated against and their descendants were added, and that for that as well. In 2017, it worked very well. It was interesting if you want to get into the details of how laws are changed. For this particular small change, what we're looking at is the second generation cutoff. And who you're looking for with the second generation cutoff are not those thousands or millions of people that a government tells you is going to be able to come and get status. They're lying. They lie all the time around this kind of stuff. They inflate numbers. They told the court that if I was successful in the McIver case, there would be 3 million people added. 125,000 is what we know, and there are probably people out there that are eligible as a result of the case that have not applied, and they don't want to apply. What we're looking about here is only status, and the government in 1985 split. They used to decide who could have status and which band they belong to. In 1985, they changed it, and they said, okay, we'll keep the status, we'll determine the status. And you guys out there in the bands, you've got the right now. Every band in the country has the right to make a membership code to decide who's going to be on their band. So this is about, it's only about status, and the Constitution Act 1867 says that the federal government is responsible for the Indians. So it's the relationship, the status is the relationship between us and the federal government. It has nothing to do with all of the promises of self-government, self-determination, and all of that stuff that's been going on forever. It has nothing to do with that, only status. And the people that will be affected, like the McIver case, like the Deschanel case in 2017, are people that are already out there sitting and they can't get status because of the regulations. And we know, because of the data that we got from the federal government, about how many people in your community, your band, how many are 6-1s? 6-1, you can pass your status on as an individual. If you're 6-2, you cannot pass it on. And you have to have another parent that has status in order to pass it on. And so what that is, and in my case, Stuart Clatworthy, who does demography and statistics around, for him it's been the Indians, and he gave evidence in my case, we're going back now to 2006. He gave evidence that what was going on with the Indian Act was a termination document. He said at that time, there would be, from his data, there would be a small band in Manitoba, and I can't remember the name, that would have their last status Indian born in 2030, which is less than 5 years from now. So it's a termination document, and that's all we're trying to do, is to make sure that that the bands are, we got an influx from C31. We got an influx from C3, which was the McIver case. We got a smaller influx from the Deschanel in 2017. But what happened, and everybody out there, because the government's telling you, well, you know, if you let this happen, you're going to be overrun with Indians. And maybe they won't even be real Indians. All of that kind of stuff. The government has been telling us that. I sat through the Senate hearings, and that's what the government is telling you, is that, oh, if you allow this to happen, you're going to be overrun with white people trying to be Indians because of the paperwork. So all I'm saying, this isn't about that. It's about, and I was introduced with doing women's rights. I'm not doing women's rights. We're responsible. I'm a matriarch of a very large family. Our responsibility is to take care of our children, make sure that our children belong to us. And as most of you know, if you're looking at the residential school, the 60s scoop, all of that, they took their children, our children, away from us, and then taught them how not to like themselves, all of those kinds of things. And I'm not going to go into it because I only got a minute left. But all I'm saying is that self-determination, all the numbers, the floodgates, and all the rights holders I'm a right holder. I was born, I'm a descendant from the Indigenous people in Canada. And me and my descendants are right holders. You know, we're trying to tell us that only the chiefs are right holders. And that's not true. They may, and I don't think they even believe that themselves, but that's what the government is telling us. So self-determination, it's a long fight, and the relationship we have with the government right now is not going to allow that, because you got to get their permission to exercise the rights you were born with. And they're not going to give the permission because because they want our land. When that Manitoba band has no more status Indian, the land goes back to, it's Crown land, it isn't even their land. So that's the overall That's the overall plan, and around the world, that's been the overall plan with colonization. Okay, and if you want to ask me any questions on that later, because I've just run out of time, I'll be here to do that, and I'll probably be hanging around if you're, I've got 50-odd years in this battle, and I know that I'm responsible for the next generation, as probably we all should be, and the next generation. I have 3 things I wanted to say is that I have a great-granddaughter by the name of Skimit who has 3 siblings, and they're not eligible. After all my work, my line runs out from my grandchildren. My good friend Pam Palmater has 2 grandchildren. They're not eligible. They're the end of that. And my really good friend and assistant, beautiful, smart young woman who's been hanging around with us because she's going to carry on after we're gone. Zoe Craig Sparrow, she's the end. She's going to get married to someone who is not status, and her children will not be eligible. So that's what I'm talking about. And I think in all of you, anyone out you there that is in this situation, and probably a lot of you are, that's who I'm speaking for. You know, what I do or all of that is really not important. I'm nobody in the overall scheme of things. But we really, really need to take care of those kids. And they're cut off. There's a band in New Brunswick who has like 40% 6-2s. And the babies of those 6-2s, they can't register them. And there's lots of them. And it's a termination document. We can call it forced assimilation, genocide, or whatever you want to. But it's the government's plan to get rid of us, and mainly because of our land and resources, and get rid of the responsibility that they undertook in 1867 when they drew up the Constitution that Canada is living under right now. Thank you for listening to me, and if you have any questions, up there you can see, oh, where did it go? Oh, it's on me. But we do have, you see those 2 things up there. One of them, if you click on one, it's a letter that you can copy and send to the House of Commons. And the other one is just some questions if you want to ask questions and explanations. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon McIver. Merci à Sharon McIver. Puis elle offrait aussi à ceux qui ont des questions pour elle. Elle dit qu'elle va rester, qu'elle va être là dans la salle d'assemblée au cours de la journée. Là, donc, si vous avez des questions, envie de poursuivre les discussions, elle va être là. I will now invite Senator Paul Prosper from Nova Scotia.
Gway, it's been a while since I've been up here in a different capacity. It's always great to come back. I am honored to be here, and certainly honored to speak after Sharon McIver, who over 5 decades, her along with so many other Indigenous women who have been fighting continuously year after year, recognizing that we're going to leave no child behind anymore here. That change is going to happen now. It's going to happen today. We will wait no longer. I want to talk about a vote, and I want to recognize the leaders that were in the Senate chamber last night. And I want to recognize my dear friend, Senatrice Sadet, the sponsor of Bill S2. and the many other allies who sat in our Indigenous Peoples Committee and listened to the witnesses. Over about 60 of them. We listened to their stories. We listened to the history of their people, of their families. We listened to stories about their culture, their traditions, and the injustices they have suffered for far too long. And it was near unanimous what we heard from those witnesses. And what we heard was Bill S2 in its current form didn't go far enough. Not at all. That it needed to get rid of all the discrimination within the Indian Act, the 1985 cutoff, the second generation cutoff, restoring it to a one-parent rule. That's how this bill was amended, through those witnesses and those senators who heard that testimony. We had lots of debate last night in the Senate chamber, and thank you for sitting through it. There were a lot of stories and a lot of opinions being brought forward. But at the end of it, there was a strong voice within that chamber when they adopted our report to allow these amendments to go through and go to the other place. Yes, we have third reading, and that will take place soon, but it will put the ball in the other court, into the House of Commons, who, as you all know, is undertaking a collaborative process. And what these amendments seek to do is to combine two realities. One reality is to get rid of the discrimination that exists now, to allow that to be repealed from the Indian Act. But what we have done as well within these amendments is we gave the federal government a certain period of time, 1 year, to continue their ongoing consultations and to allow input, not on whether these discriminatory provisions should be taken out. We already know they're discriminatory, but it's how we move forward with getting rid of the realities of the 1985 cutoff and the second generation cutoff, and to allow communities to establish their own systems and processes to determine who are members within their respective communities. This bill, these amendments give that opportunity for government, and the ball will soon be in their court to do so. I wish many of you had that opportunity to listen in on some of the testimony and evidence. And certainly some of you have been listening to and reading some of the articles that have come out. Articles from people like Rose LeMay in the Hill Times. And it was referenced by Senator Kim Pate last night, where she referenced Rose's article. And it goes like this. Picture this consultation that is ongoing right now. And she says, it's like demanding to spend a few $1 million consulting First Nations women who are hungry, asking, do you want food in a year or 5 years, instead of feeding them? How does one consult on the extinction of a people, of nations, of communities? I want to read some testimony from an incredible person who gave me some tobacco because I was the one leading these amendments within the chamber, within committee. And this is some of her testimony, which I will read to you. At 19, when I gave birth to my son, I was also condemned. No legacy of my time on Turtle Island could be passed down to my son, to my flesh and blood. If I die right now, my family heritage cannot be legally handed down to him. That means that in the next few months, I will have to sell our house, our roots, and a refuge for both of us. I'd rather mourn a material loss than hand down to him a sentence that will certainly haunt him for the rest of his life. The fact that he was not entitled to inherit what his mother has built for him and for us. These are the stories that we heard from many people within that chamber, and we acted upon it, and we put those amendments within this act, and soon it will go over to the other place where they will undertake their own systems and processes, but hopefully they will listen to what we have heard. I encourage you to please act. These chances don't come around very often, and we all know it's all a question of money for some politicians. We all know that more status people for some people means more government funding. But there's a notion of justice that is deep within our hearts that we must fulfill, not for ourselves, but for our future generations, our communities, and our nations. Please write, lobby, speak to your local MPs, to the relevant ministers, and let them know we will not take this anymore, that we need change, and we need change now. Walalio, thank you very much.
Wilalia, Sénateur Prosper. Je vais maintenant inviter l'honorable Mandigo Masti,
I will now invite the Honorable Mandigo Masti,
I will now invite
Minister of Indigenous
the
Services
Honorable
Canada.
Mandigo Masti, Minister of Indigenous Services Canada.
Thank you. Wajagam sir. Egoni Mandigo Masti in Sangason, you square name was on Pino Chain. Egoni ji we higan jab chist mugo yo jotin how Canada beaches so at that. My name is Mandigo Masti. I'm from the community of the Cree First Nation of Waswanipi. I have been appointed to work as the Indigenous Services Minister by His Honorable Prime Minister Mark Carney to work with him for you. I want to thank my colleagues for coming to this stage today and for sharing this space with me. I have the unique position to be the minister that is in charge of the Indian Act. It is one of the biggest challenges and heavy processes that I've ever had to deal with in a position of leadership. I want to speak a little bit to process, I want to speak to procedure, and I want to speak to outcome. The procedure around S2 is a bill that seeks to address enfranchisement, one form of discrimination that is reflected in all parts of the Indian Act. The entirety of the document is derogatory and harmful to First Nations people in this country, the only group in this country whose identity is legislated by the government. S2 was submitted to the bill, is a bill that was submitted to the Senate through my colleague and friend, Madame Odette, who is my sponsor, who I've known for a very long period of time and have respect for, even though the process that we're working through takes us through different paths. And I want to acknowledge that while we're coming here to speak to you today, it is everybody's goal on this panel, including my own, to bring an end to second-generation cutoff. That is my goal, that is my objective, that is the work that I am intending to do. I simply have a different path to take. Enfranchisement, the relinquishment of your status, the deregistration of who you are in S2 is what this bill was written for. There are other components of S2 that address derogatory language. I won't get into the specifics of S2. I think my colleague spoke to it. But I am going to speak to what termination is. Second generation cutoff, you cease to exist to be a First Nations person in this country because of who you are born from. This is a complex issue that requires a multitude of solutions. It's been a challenging place to be in. I'm going to be very frank and transparent. To see articles, to see stories of me on the news, that I'm a minister who does not want to address second generation cutoff, so I will be clear for a second time and say it is the work that I am undertaking through the collaborative consultation process to find solution for when you remove second generation cutoff from the Indian Act. And the reason why the problem is so complex in second generation cutoff is for two reasons. First and foremost, every First Nation across this country is diverse. They are governed by different systems, be it treaty, be it modern lands claim, post-Confederation, pre-Confederation, unceded territory. How you interact with your members is different. In addition, we know across the country that communities are in different spaces. It's my role as minister to support them when they are in a space of high capacity and able to implement decision quickly, or if they need support all the way down into the space of being moderate or low capacity, because they need additional supports to address where they're at. While S2 seeks to immediately reinstate status to 3,500 members, which we have identified and pulled out, the immediacy of return from disenfranchisement is one that we were hopeful that S2 would meet in a timely manner. This is why we sent it through the Senate. The work of the Senate to amend second generation and include is one that I respect and understand. They have had the experience of working with ministers before that have come into that space and spoken to that. And with all due respect, I know that they come from a place of wanting to do good work for our people. I trust and acknowledge that. We're not participating in this panel today to debate who is right or wrong or what process needs to be taken. I'm simply here to show and speak to the path that I must take is different from those of my colleague. While they have the capacity to amend and do the work to change the contents of the bill, I have already last year, as one of my first decisions as minister, requested to expedite collaborative consultation. The first part of that process looks to work with community in defining how you have a conversation with a consultation process that does not solely look at discrimination, but looks at what you do when making that change and removing second generation. I come from a modern lands claim that has multiple criteria in how that decision is taken. Part of it is genealogical, part of it is determined who your kinship is. But we also have recognition by community that we define who we accept. We also have a residency clause. We've also instituted a committee that allows for our members to determine what citizenship code is. While reverting the Indian Act back to 1985 is one solution that is proposed, a one-parent rule, for me, I believe it is status quo. Returning to what once did not work, I think we need to do more for First Nations in this country. Creating the space for them to define what their membership is, the process in which they recognize their citizens, is a critical part of this discussion. That is what consultation is looking to achieve. Creating the space for communities to identify how, when, and where they will define their membership, identifying the service, how they will undertake implementation, is a critical part of that discussion. I know that there is the opportunity to seize the moment. Still, nonetheless, procedurally, as the bill comes to the House, it must undergo review, it must undergo study by the Standing Committee. There is still a mechanism that requires a period of time. While I have heard on multiple occasions there is the risk of change of government or a shift from my appointment as minister, I think both pathways meet this. In looking at second generation cutoff, I think it's important that we seize the opportunity to have a larger conversation, a conversation that asks community to do the critical work to move away from second generation, to absolve it, and to define not only their membership, but how they will work with Section 10 cutoffs. Many of you as leaders have encountered the percentage required to make change in bylaw at the local level, which can be challenging when your members live off reserve. This is a part of the work that we have to do in that space of consultation, how to move away from that, how to refine it, empowering communities with the tools that exist. I've heard it on a number of occasions that there has been consultation that has been done previously. And there has. 40 years of work looking at whether or not this part of the Indian Act is discriminatory, 40 years of work that has been undertaken, all documents from the AFN, from ISC, from Senate, from APA, clearly confirming that the second generation cutoff is a direct legacy of colonial policy. I want to acknowledge that full removal of the second generation cutoff and the related two-parent rule is important work. Adopting a gender-neutral one-parent rule moving forward is one potential solution of many. I'm here to support not only the work of the Senate to create a bridging between the solutions that we're proposing, but also supporting First Nations in their jurisdiction over citizenship and membership. This is a larger part of the conversation that we need to have, and that responsibility lays with them. And as a minister, I am legally and constitutionally obliged to respect your authority to do that. That doesn't only mean at the chief and council level, that means ensuring that you take the time to engage and discuss with your members, youth, women, elders, at the community level to give you the important input to shape and determine what the future of your nation looks like. While I have seen many different reports being tabled, it is clear that in my analysis of these reports, there are identified gaps. It does not indicate a roadmap for a detailed implementation plan. It does not identify the tools that the communities need. It does not require the supports that the communities will depend on to do this important work. I'm here in this space to be able to work with you and offer that. I know that the one-parent rule is one solution that the Senate is seeking to introduce. As I said earlier, I'm here to bridge that gap. I'm also here to express very clearly that I must do the work to offer you more than one solution. I'm here to work with you in community to define that pathway for you to define and clearly develop the tools that you need. I also have the additional responsibility to work with my colleagues within government. I've chosen to come into this space to make the change that we so desperately need at the federal level in our relationship with First Nations people. It is a challenging space to be in, but I know that if we seek to address that and do not take up the space to make that change, we will continue to encounter the legacy of those harms. Lastly, in closing, I want to reiterate that there's a component of this work that requires a transition period. While communities seek to identify their members, I'm looking for collaboration and co-development to ensure that as I continue to offer programs and services, I am providing them to your rightful members. There's a transition process that needs to roll out. While I know there is a one-year period that is recommended, I think we have to meet community in the place that they're in and provide and allocate them the time that they need to transition, while ensuring that we are upholding our duty to provide program and service in a fair and equitable manner. This is the place that I speak from because this is what I have heard and read in many of the items that have been submitted to my office, both the previous consultations, the many briefing documents that were submitted through the consultation process, the testimony in the Senate that I also listened to. It is clear, everybody in this room, everybody on this panel, including myself, seek and have the will to address the second generation cutoff. While I am in this space of being a minister, my pathway is different. I have to uphold the legal and constitutional duty to consult, not on whether or not the Indian Act discriminates against you, which it does. It is to ensure that the solutions that you are seeking in removal of second generation meet you as a nation. The uniqueness and diversity of First Nations across this country is based in community, in language, in culture, in identity. And it is why I believe a one-parent solution is one part of the process, but it is not one that reflects the uniqueness of who we all are as First Nations here in Canada.
Thank you to the Honorable Mandigo Masti. I just want to remind you that the Honorable Mandigo Masti will also be there with us tomorrow morning for the ministerial panel, and there will be a Q&A as well at that moment. And for closing remarks, I will turn over the microphone to the National Chief.
Well, thank you. You know, I have to I don't want to take too much time because I know it's lunchtime and we're all hungry. I haven't eaten yet, but I have to lift up a lot of our women. I was telling one of our women chief, Frost, today about, child welfare, and I said, look at our women. They're doing all this hard work, and so I know that it's a tough role for you, Minister, but we're all, we thank you for being here today, as well as our former regional chief, Senator Prosper. And Sharon McIver, I said, I'm so honored to sit beside you, and thank you for your work, as well as Drew LaFond, who's one of our inspiring lawyers. But I just want to thank all of our speakers today. This is about our identity, about our families, and about our future generations. And I know that it's a really tough, hard discussion, but we have to get this right because our young people are waiting. And I often think about our little ones that are born, and are we forgetting them? And are we, and I want to think about those next. It impacts all of us. This impacts our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. So let's get this right together. So thank you so very much. Miigwech.
Miigwech Chaweng, thank you. Alors merci à toutes les 4 personnes qui étaient avec nous pour ce panel. Drew LaFond, Sharon McIver, Senator Paul Prosper, and the Honorable Mandigo Masti. Donc, on se revoit à 13h. We will be back at 1 p.m. for resolutions. So we will wait for you over at that moment. And I just want to remind you that the noon was the last moment when you could send your late resolutions, so no more late resolutions will be accepted at this time. Thank you, and we'll see you after lunch.